Good evening, everybody, and welcome to tonight's special edition Facebook Live. My name is Nancy Abdu. I'm from the Australian Dermal and Laser Institute, and tonight we're joined by someone incredibly special, someone whose voice, experience, and leadership have shaped not just the industry, but our understanding of true inclusivity. It is a huge honour to introduce Peta Friend, a proud trans woman and respected skin therapist with over 45 years of experience and a powerful advocate for the LGBTQIA plus community. Did I get that right?
Yeah, there's a lot of letters.
There's a lot of letters. But tonight's very meaningful because Peta is going to be sharing her personal journey, a story of identity, resilience, and the evolving role that aesthetics can play in supporting gender-affirming care. For therapists, electrologists, and dermal clinicians, and anyone working in aesthetics, what you're about to hear is invaluable. Peta's perspective goes beyond technique. It touches on humanity, safety, and the deeper emotional layers behind the treatments we provide. Thank you so much, Peta, for joining us this space to share your story. And I'm not only grateful, but honoured and very happy that you're here. And I know that our community will take so much away from this conversation. So thank you once more, Peta. I'm very excited to have you here with me.
Thank you, Nancy, and thank you for this opportunity, because if it wasn't for people like you who are our true allies, creating a platform for people like me to share my voice would never happen.
Yeah.
So thanks for this opportunity.
No, pleasure. Really excited to have you here. First, before we get into some nice, deep and meaningful conversation, I don't know, we were discussing a little bit earlier about Sydney and you wanted to say a few words, perhaps?
Yeah, well, it just seemed the irony was not lost on me today in light of what happened this weekend in Bondi Beach. And here we are coming here tonight to talk about inclusivity and acceptance and, and coming from our hearts and overriding everything else, talking about what it is to be different, to put our differences aside and all be human beings in one space.
Yeah.
That is basically what I wanted to talk about tonight. But then in light of what happened over this weekend, I think it has more importance. I don't want to diminish what happened over the weekend, but I just wanted to acknowledge what happened and pay respects to the Sydney-siders and the Jewish community that were deeply, irreparably affected by this. And, let's move forward with positivity and let's all just try and create something better, and let's all try and take from something really, really horrible, something positive.
Really tragic.
Really tragic.
Yeah. So,
and words can't suffice just how horrible it's been.
Words will never be enough. So to anyone who has been impacted, my thoughts and prayers are with you. For anyone who is feeling distressed, obviously there is many avenues, including Lifeline. But for those of you who have been impacted in other ways and just need help with your business, please reach out to Nina or Brittany or myself. We're more than willing to support in ways that we can, whether it's just trying to get your team not demotivated, but more motivated or inspired, or you just need a distraction. I'm more than happy to do a free session with the team just to sort of regroup and get a bit of motivation and, like I said, distraction. So please reach out.
Yeah.
But tonight's a little bit about you, well, a lot about you, all about you really, and your journey. So first of all, who are you? Who is Peta Friend? Before any of all of that, who are you?
Who am I? I'm 64 years of age. I'm born and bred in Sydney. I'm from a fairly, normal upbringing. We were brought up in the eastern suburbs of Sydney. I have a twin sister and I have two elder sisters as well. So I was born in 1961 and my parents have passed away. So my family has become smaller. but yeah, I had a fairly normal upbringing, one that there were a lot of expectations put on me because I was born a boy. And being born in 1961 and then growing up in the 70s into the 80s before I became an adult was an interesting time. But we never had dialogue back then that matched my identity. I knew I was a boy, but I never really felt like a boy, but I never had the words to understand or whatever. There was no discussion then even about homosexuals or anything like that. But as I grew up and I learned to understand that my attraction was romantically was towards boys, not girls, I came to accept that I was probably a homosexual and this was the option open to me. So when I left school and I went out into the world and I got my first car and I discovered Oxford Street and I went to the gay bars and I had a fabulous time.
Yeah.
And, I made lots of wonderful friends in the late 70s, early 80s. And it was an amazing time to be alive. It was exciting. We were experiencing freedoms, but nothing sort of felt right with me then. And even then, I should have felt at home. I should have felt like one of the boys, but it just didn't. And slowly I started to meet people that sort of reflected who I was. And I started to connect with what we would come to call transsexual women. And seeing those women and hearing those stories, and then, I'd read a couple of books on certain famous transgender women, and seeing myself in those pages, something started to grow in me, something started to emerge in me. And it was an undeniable truth that I couldn't escape. Once it was presented to me, it was always going to be there. But at that point in my life, being so young, not having the support, I didn't really know where to start. I didn't know what to do. There were no doors or avenues that I thought were open to me. So I became a beauty therapist.
I love that. If not, then this is like boom. Wow.
Shall I keep going?
Yes,
This
is great. Can I grab the popcorn?
I grabbed the popcorn. So here I am in 1983. I enrolled at About Face Academy, which was located at Birkenhead Point here in Sydney, and under the guidance of Shirley Strickland and our amazing teacher, Jennifer Taylor. I studied beauty therapy and I loved it. Wow. I was the only boy at beauty school and I just felt so at home and I just thought, this is me. I'm finally, doing something I really love. And then coming out into the workforce, and it wasn't easy for being a boy in the industry back in those days. But I eventually did find a job in Wallara and I stayed there for 8 years. Wow. And it wasn't a great job, and it was really, but it was difficult because I stayed there because I didn't think anyone else would employ me. But I did start building up my clientele. And here I am 45 years later, and I'm still doing quite a few of those ladies that followed me all these years from salon to salon in different places. And, I've been doing their facials every month for the last 45 years. And some of them still won't tell me their age.
You probably have kept them really young, that, they've maintained that youth anyway. So...
Well, yeah, if they haven't, I'm not doing my job properly, right?
There you go. There you go. Wow.
There I was, working in salons and everything. And then, I was about 23, 24 by this point where I thought, I've got to do something about this. So I went to a psychiatrist and he directed me to a doctor. And I started to take hormones when I was about 24. And I was on those hormones only for a period of 6 weeks when I hit the wall. Wow. And I couldn't handle the emotional turmoil. I couldn't handle the bodily changes. And I felt completely isolated. There was no one to talk to. There was no support in those days. It was extremely difficult. So over the next 17, 16 years, well, up until the age of 37, 38, I struggled with that. I was in and out of different genders, going on hormones, going off hormones, you know. And then the AIDS crisis hit and most of my friends died.
Oh, no.
So the support that I thought was there suddenly disappeared.
Wow.
And when you're in your 20s and you start losing your friends, it changes you for life. And you realise the fragility of life and you realise you only get one point. And I knew from that point onwards that I really had to do this because I had a chance to live that these boys didn't get. And so finally I met my saviour, and after losing one of my closest friends, I met my now still business partner, who is Will Fennell. And Will and I started a business in 1995. And I was kind of broken in a million different places at this point, but together he and I started a little clinic in Darlinghurst called Baby Blue Face and Body Care. And we just celebrated 30 years in business. And it's been an interesting time. Like within a year or two of that, I suddenly had the independence. I didn't have to answer to anybody. I thought, this is a space now, being my own boss, where I can transition. Yeah. But I'm going to tell you something that loops back to what we are here to talk about tonight. I had a lot of facial hair. And this is something I've never really spoken about before because it's almost a little bit embarrassing now. But over those 15, 16 years, I would be going to electrolysis people for 2 hours a week. So 2 one-hour sessions every Tuesday after work and every Thursday after work. And I'd lay there and they'd do each individual hair one by one. And I know it's hard to believe looking at me now because my face is completely clear. But anyone who worked in the 80s in beauty therapy knows that the wages were very low. So this was taking any extra money I had. So my focus was on that. Once I got my own business, at the same time we saw the advent, the very first laser hair removal machines. And I was taking all my hormones and everything. So I went off and got a few sessions of laser hair removal, and lo and behold, my beard literally disappeared overnight. It was incredible, but I still had to do electrolysis because, as you know, you don't get 100% clearance with laser. But it was enough to free myself from what I thought was the very male part of myself. Yeah. I had everything done. I had gone off and I had facial feminization work done. I changed my entire face, and it was just this very last hurdle that I needed to get over in order to complete my transition was the hair removal. Yeah. And it's worth discussing because there's a lot of trans people that never complete that hair removal journey. And it's such a male thing to have facial hair. Yeah. You and I both know that a lot of women struggle with it. A lot of biological women struggle with hair on their face and how it zaps people's confidence. But for me, it didn't just zap my confidence, it stopped me from living my true self. Yeah. And then once it was gone and I went to Thailand and I had sex change surgery, which is what we called it back in those days. There's different language now, but I'm going to talk about what the language we used at that time. And the surgery sort of changed my entire body chemistry, and it brought me much closer to who I am. Yep. But what people don't understand, you think, okay, the surgery gives you the physical body of a woman and everything. I was going to get as close to being a biological woman as I'm ever going to be. Yep. But the most important thing it gave me was a chance at happiness. And that's something I had never experienced in my life. Wow. And, you know, I came back from Thailand a changed person, and I've carried that little well of happiness in me every single day through all of life's challenges. You know, you can get through anything. And I think, you know, I just wanted to say very clearly about identity and gender is I'm not pretending to be a woman. I'm not sitting here tonight and saying to you, I am a woman. Because, Nancy, I will never be a biological woman. You are a biological woman. I am a biological man. But I present myself in a female way, and the world responds back to me. So therefore, I think that I've earned my pronouns, and my pronouns are she, her.
Yep.
But I know who I am, and I know where I've come from, and I don't want to deny that part of myself, because he was a very special part of me, and he carried me in him for a very, very long time, nurtured me, gave me everything I needed to come out, But he is still very much a part of me. So this is my journey and my story, and I know that each story is an individual journey with an individual destination and individual identity. But this is my truth, and I just wanted to make that very, very clear. And I'm very comfortable with who I am, and I'm very much, I very also acknowledge that that's not everyone's truth who has my experience.
Yes.
So, I think that's really important to understand that we all come with a different truth, different ideals and different values, but also, it makes it very difficult to understand sometimes. Because we all have such a different, varying narrative around it, especially these days with social media.
Yes, yeah. But, thank you for sharing all of that and for being so open, honest, raw, transparent, and authentic.
Thank you.
And that's not enough words. And I can understand, or I think I can understand how challenging it would be to say, hey, this is actually me, this is who I feel, this completes now, you essentially. And I just think back, I'm just going to go back for a second. You said, for women, facial hair, it's a real struggle. I have 3 or 4 hairs growing and I'm embarrassed.
I still
and it's, but I'm thinking, I don't think I've ever, and I could ever put myself in your position or in your world and quite understand your feelings. And so to just have that little glimpse and understand a little bit of that will make me better as a therapist and as a practitioner, and as a human, actually. Not forget my my job and what I do, but it'll actually just I just appreciate you and your journey. I could never imagine how hard that would be, because for so many years you're wearing a mask.
We all have our challenges in life.
Pardon?
Yeah. I think we all have our challenges in life. I think
that's huge though.
It's huge because I think it held me back. I think I would have transitioned a lot sooner if I could just get rid of that facial hair. And I know that there's some trans women now that can live with that and are happy to shave their faces every day and not happy, but maybe for me that was never going to be. Yeah. I could, for me, I wanted to be, I had 3 attractive sisters and a very glamorous mother. So the bar from a very early age was set very, very high for me.
Yep.
And having facial hair and having to shave my face was not a part of that. So for me, it was really, really important to get rid of every single hair. And all those days back in the 80s into the 90s when I would go and I used to see this amazing lady in the Dimmicks building in Sydney called Christine O'Connell, who's this lovely Irish lady. And you're laying there, basically you share your life with her because you're there for 2 hours every week, and anything to distract yourself from the pain.
Yeah.
These women, they at the City Electrolysis Centre were kind, were supportive, and they were so nurturing and so caring. And some days I just lay there and cry, and then some days I just lay there and laugh. But most of the time I was laying in there cringing of pain. I say, give me sex change surgery any day, but I found the pain of electrolysis back in those days was the most painful thing I've ever had done. And it used to do my head in.
Oh my God.
I don't know if it's like I don't need to have it anymore. I'd like to think that people wouldn't have to go through. I know we didn't even use numbing creams in those days. We didn't even have numbing cream to take the edge off it. I just had to lay there and, let me tell you, I've developed like I developed a very strong pain threshold.
Well, look, I've got so many questions, but let me just answer one question before I go back to what I had in my mind, which was with the pain. So we have a device called the Apple's
Yes.
Pro. And so back then, I'll just speak from my experience. I had my eyebrows done about 20 years ago with Asterix, and I mean, that was my brows. Forget, I would not even do my upper lip because it's so painful with Asterix. But it was so painful. Every time, like, I'd get the probe in and, the heat would go on, it's like, she's going to burn me. And that's what it felt like. Now, it's changed so much that instead of the probe being in your follicle for 10, 15, 20 seconds, it's like a thousandth of a second. And so, isn't it? So before
you must get so much more clearance. Like if a client books in for half an hour, you must just get so much clearance in that time.
Yeah, well, we're looking at about 120 to 150 follicles per 15 minutes. 15 minutes as opposed to an hour. And it's just so much more comfortable. And so instead of booking in for 15 minutes, clients are going to book in for 45 for an hour because it's just doable. And then clients, instead of saying, oh, I'm just going to do this little bit, well, yes, I will do my underarms, or yes, I will do, other body areas. Yeah. So it's become so much more. Pardon?
I studied the basics of electrolysis at beauty school back in 83.
Yeah.
I might be getting myself one of these machines because I think there's so many of my clients and few clients and people in my community that I could help. And I think, you and I will have to talk about this.
Yeah, in January, you're coming to, and this is why we've got you here anyway, but in January, we've got you coming for the masterclass after the ABIC symposium. So on day 2, but I would love for you to have, I don't know if you've got any hair left, but I would, you'll find one or two, but you'll have to actually try it because it is amazing. Like, amazing. I'm not just saying that. It is.
Well, let me tell you, for people in my community, it's going to change their lives.
It will. And I know it will.
It'll change their lives.
It will. And we're not even talking facial hair, intimate areas. So,
well, let's talk about intimate area for a minute.
Yes.
Because this is not my experience, but when it comes to gender-affirming surgery, which is what it is called these days, not sex change, a lot of surgeons require their transgender female clients to have hair removal on the scrotum area.
Yep.
And I didn't have to do that because, and I won't go into why I didn't, but I didn't have to because my surgeon had other ways of doing it. Yeah. But, and that would be, I mean, I would have been mortified if I'd had to have that done because that was the part of myself I never wanted to show anybody. But, if a therapist is comfortable enough to do those things on a really intimate area and, I must say that I don't think people should ever do anything they're not comfortable doing.
Absolutely.
Or treat one they're not comfortable treating. But this is something that a lot of trans people will have to go through prior to getting the surgery done. So one day I'll explain why, but it's a bit too graphic for tonight.
Okay. When I see you in Sydney, we could talk about that. But going back to what I was going to say, actually what you told me last week, it stuck, which was usually it is a beauty therapist or a dermal clinician or someone, a therapist, is the first point of contact you'll ever discuss this with anyone. Forget the psychologist, forget the surgeon, forget whoever it is. It's usually a beauty therapist. Tell me about your experience.
Well, it is, but you might see a doctor first and start taking hormones.
True.
But I can guarantee you your first stop in your gender-affirming care is usually a salon that does hair removal, whether it's laser or electrolysis or a combination of the both or one or the other. And that first, it's something like these people are coming into the salon, they're vulnerable, they're often carrying trauma. They've got so much internalized trauma, a lot of trans people. Not all of them, some of them. And, and it's kind of embarrassing, because you have to come makeup free and expose yourself like that. So it's very important for people in our industry to be understanding and compassionate. And, there's certain things that I think are very, very important for an electrolysis operator or anyone in this industry to understand when treating transgender clients. Because once you have an understanding of that, and once you develop your language around it, and the power of words is very, very important. Once you do that, then you will have clients for life. And you will develop an amazing relationship with that trans client. And you will learn so much from them. And you will learn to have a bigger heart with more compassion for people that you never thought that you would come in contact with. And there are certain things that just the very, very basics that need to be respected. You've got to understand that when a person, and this was myself, starts out in our journey, I didn't walk into a salon looking like I look now. I walked into that salon looking like George Michael. And for a lot of trans people, it's the first step. So they might want to be seen as women. They want to be seen as women, and they want to be acknowledged as women, but their maleness is still very prevalent.
Yeah.
And, it's important to have the good use of language around this, and getting the pronouns right is just the very basic. Like if someone comes in and they says, I'm starting my journey of becoming a woman, I think it'd be really nice if you could use the pronoun she, her, despite what they look like.
Yeah.
I think it's the very, very least thing we can do.
Yeah.
The second thing is, don't ask invasive questions. If that person chooses to tell their story, if that person chooses to open up to you, then let it happen in a very fluid, organic way. But don't force the conversation. The third thing is, we as trans people are not here to educate you about transness. I would recommend everyone do their homework. This is why I'm lending my voice to this conversation. This is why I'm coming to your symposium on the 14th. Because who better than me to talk about my experience and what we can do in our beauty community to just make what is a very important part of their journey that little bit easier.
Absolutely.
And, let's open our hearts, let's open our minds, and I think it's going to be, education is very important. And sharing my story, I think, is an important one, because not only am I a beauty therapist for 45 years, so I come from that perspective of caring for clients for that long, but also being on the receiving end and going to clinics and being looked after. And I've got to say, I got lucky. Apart from one incident, which was only a telephone conversation back in the 80s, where I was going to go to this clinic in Bondi, and I won't name names because that clinic is no longer there anyway. And I said to this practitioner, can I come and get some hair removal done? I'm transgender. She said to me, quite frankly, no, you're not welcome in this salon. And I said, why? And she said, for hygiene reasons. She didn't even know I was a beauty therapist. And that stuck with me, because I just put the phone down and I thought, okay. But I had my girls at the Dimmicks building that were going to look after me anyway. Wow. But that has always stuck with me, because I just thought it was one of the most heartless and cruel things that anyone could ever say to another human being, because they totally dehumanize you in that moment. And that might make them feel better. But, that was the 80s, and I got to say that people didn't really know any better back then. They didn't, and I think with the AIDS crisis, it kind of made things even worse, because, there was a lot of hatred back then directed towards people in our community.
Yeah. Well, I'm sorry you had to go through that. And it's just a simple sentence, but it's stuck with you. The flip side is, how's it made you now as a therapist? Having heard that personally, how have you flipped it?
Oh, if I flipped it, I'm probably, I think like most people that enter into this industry, I'm a very compassionate person. And I think that I'm also very nurturing. And, I think a lot of us get into this industry because we want to look after people. We want to make people feel good. We want to make people look good. I mean, God knows it's not for the money.
Oh, no. So some of the things that we do,
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think I always had a very big heart and everything. So it didn't, I'm gonna be honest, it didn't really impact me negatively or positively. I just remained in my truth and remained very, very focused. And I didn't let it drag me down at all.
Strong.
But I had a very positive experience. That was the one negative thing that happened to me. But I've got to say that all the girls and different girls that looked after me over the years, from electrolysis to laser and everything, I have only had positive experiences and experienced kindness and acceptance.
Beautiful.
I've never had any negativity wherever I've gone.
Yeah.
I do live in the eastern suburbs of Sydney. And I think for trans people who live in rural areas, and for trans people who come from different cultural and religious backgrounds, it's a very different thing. I'm going to say the other thing about trans people, that we are very much judged on our appearance. Mm-hmm. The thing I hear all the time is, I'd never know you were trans because you just look like a woman. And I know that's meant to be a compliment. And it's kind of not, because most trans people have something about them that's not passable. And I'm going to include myself in that. There are things about me that do give me away. And, I know I can navigate my way through life and through my career. And I don't really have to worry about it a lot. But if I step out of my comfort zone and I'm in an area where I know I'm not welcome, or if I walk into a very straight pub or a bar, and I do still tend to avoid these areas, I feel very vulnerable. And, but within this industry, I've always felt safe. I've felt supported by my clients. I've felt supported by my colleagues in this industry, people like you, people, for the girls from Bliss Day Spa.
They're amazing. Dan's
amazing. It's like, everyone I've met in this industry has been so kind and so supportive of me. And they didn't have to be, I think people choose how
it's not hard to be kind.
People, I think people make a choice. Yeah. But I think if we're in this industry, I think this industry is built on the back of kindness and resilience and the desire to help people and change people's lives.
Love it, love it. So let's go the other way. Being a trans woman, how's that made you as a therapist?
I'm going to tell you something. When I finally transitioned and I was able to bring my whole self to work, I think I definitely improved. I became more confident. Yeah. I became, just there were so many different ways that it changed me. But I really, I think I've improved as a skin therapist over the last 10, 15 years especially, nothing to do with anything about being trans. Yeah. I've improved as a therapist over the last period of time because I've upped my education. There was a time in my life where I questioned whether I wanted to do this for the rest of my life. Yeah. And once I went through that, my own sort of midlife crisis, and I came out the other side, I was determined to be better and do better. And this energy started to come from me. I tapped into something and it started to come out through my hands. Wow. And my touch improved. And I don't think that had anything to do with me being trans, but I'll never really know the answer to that because I don't really think about it
Just
every
happen.
single day. You know, in preparing for tonight and whenever I present or do public speaking or go into business and do corporate speaking, I think about these things. I think about the transness of it all, and then I just let it organically sort of come from me. But most of the time my transness is kind of back there.
Yeah.
It's not part of my everyday life, you know. I'm very focused on what I do at work.
Yeah.
It's my client time, it's not my time. Yeah.
Okay. I'm just looking at the time and I can ask you so many questions. I'm trying to pick it because you've got so many amazing things to share, and you've shared so many wonderful things that you're full of knowledge. And like I said, that authenticity and honesty and transparency means a lot to me. So again, thank you. So I know a lot of therapists want to provide gender affirming care, but they're afraid to make a mistake, or saying the wrong thing. So what do you think are some of the things that, practitioners or therapists can overlook when they're trying to create an inclusive, affirming experience, a safe place?
I think this is a really interesting question.
Yeah.
And there's no clear answer for this. I'm only going to say that once you open, you people like this start coming into your salons, into your place of work, you're going to stuff up. You're going to make a mistake every now and then. But so long as you treat that person as a human being with kindness and respect, you will apologise and move on. But as someone who's been in situations, and it's happened to me, believe it or not, in the medical field more than anywhere, not so much our industry, but in the medical industry, going to doctors and, finding someone to look after me for gender-affirming care. I've often ended up being the one that has to do the educating with the doctor, which is crazy to me. But, I don't think it's asking a lot for people in the medical industry to have an understanding of how to care for people like me.
Yeah.
But in our industry, I think if you're not sure of something, if you're not sure of what pronouns to use, ask.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean...
And we as trans people know when people are not being cruel, that they're, if you're leading with kindness, if you're leading with compassion and trying to develop an understanding, you might be nervous. It might be new territory to you. If it completely goes against your religious or cultural beliefs, then you don't have to deal with people like me. No one's forcing you to do anything that you're not comfortable with.
Yep.
But I do think that it's up to the managers or the owners of the business. It starts up from the top and it's got to work its way down. So getting, doing the education, having evenings and having open discussions with your staff members about what it is to care for trans clients, what it is, the right kind of language to use, and the importance of when you do make mistakes, we don't mean to disrespect people, but if we do make mistakes, we are also human beings.
Yeah.
And we correct ourselves and we pick ourselves up and we move on and we learn from it. But I do think, though, that salons do need to have sessions with their staff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, and what are your thoughts? I mean, we're doing... You're coming in on the 14th to speak a bit more in depth about your journey, and we'll probably cover consultations and especially consultation forms. What are they supposed to look like, and what does a consultation look like, and so forth. Apart from doing that, like, what else would there be? Like, what else is there? This is such a foreign area, isn't it?
Start with really thorough consultation, but I do think it's got to be a two-way street as well. I think that trans people need to understand that everyone's still trying to work it out.
Yeah.
Everyone's still trying to move forward, and that there's a lot of publicity now, and I think people are walking on eggshells around this subject.
Yeah.
And there's so many different pronouns now.
What do you think?
What do I think of that?
Yeah.
I think people are who they say they are. Bottom line.
Yep. Yep.
And someone, I mean, I've met a lot of trans and gender diverse people in my, particularly over the last 10 years. And when you look at it on paper and you see all those pronouns and you think, oh my God, this is crazy, I don't understand. But then you meet someone who uses they, them pronouns. And you think, I understand this now. You know, like even me as a trans person, I want to understand this better. And I do this by listening to that person, by connecting with that person as a human being, not as an object, not as an object of curiosity, not as someone to be mocked or talked about or joked about.
Yep.
Because we get enough of that from society. You know, for people like me, I can walk down the street and my transness is not visible. I know that.
Yeah.
And I've got the receipts for it, believe me. I did not look this way. So I know what it's like to be stared at. I know what it's like to be criticised. But we as trans women, we're expected to be ultra feminine half the time, and half the time we're not.
Yeah.
Some are big and blokeish and
half the
you
time
know,
I'm not.
you know, like some walk into a room and our maleness might, you know, be so obvious to everyone. But just because we look a certain way doesn't mean that we should be disrespected. You know, just because,
I agree.
You know, a lot of trans people, there's no notebook there about how to be a woman. And I know there's one way of being a woman. And to being a woman doesn't necessarily even mean you have to be feminine.
Yeah.
But, you know, for each trans person, femininity may not be the end game. Accepting people as they are, accepting people as they present, and accepting people for them saying who they are, not what we think they are, not what we want them to be, but accepting them for that.
I think sometimes
is really, really important. And I know it's a lot to get your head around. But when you meet these people and you talk to these people, it changes your perspective on life and it changes the way you look at the human experience.
So true. And I think at the end of the day, like, close your eyes and talk to the person and, like, who are they? Take off the outside and there's, you know, it doesn't matter who, the label, right? Neurodiverse, gender diverse, all diverse,
non-binary.
Yeah. But I'm even like like for me, like neurodiverse. So there is a label and there's that bit of an expectation of this is who you're going to be and this is who you should portray. But close your eyes and it's like at the end of the day, we all have a heart, we all have a soul. You know, treat each person as like you say, as an individual who's got a heart, because everyone feels.
Yeah, and some people are just on a journey, you know.
Aren't we all?
We're all on a journey, and I think that you know, there's a lot of people that are passing through the gendered experience, and will come out the other side. But you know, there's a lot like myself who, you know, I felt like I had no choice. You know, if I deserved a shot at life, then I needed to live like this. And living as a woman and working in this industry, it has far exceeded my expectations. And my expectations, I suppose, were quite low. I always hoped and I dreamed that I'd be able to live as a woman and stay in this industry and be successful. And I've done all that.
Tick, tick, tick.
I've done it and I'm continuing to do it. You know, at 64 years of age, there's further challenges to face, you know?
Yeah.
Getting old is a bitch, babe.
It's all right. We've got high food. We've got stuff.
I'll just book in. I'm ready for everything.
Yeah. We've got machines. We've got stuff.
Exactly. Yeah. Aging.
That's it. You know, nothing that we can't fix, right?
Oh, great.
If not, then there's surgery.
Exactly. I'm open to everything.
Oh my gosh. This has been like very enlightening, and I've learned a lot.
What? Okay, so I've got a
I
question for you.
Oh, okay.
What have you learnt tonight?
Gosh, I've learned a lot about you, and I've what you see isn't. I mean, it's not like what have I. It's you're confirming the journey. What I see isn't necessarily what you're gonna get. There's a lot more depth. There's a lot more insight. Your journey's been a lot harder than I actually thought, and that's where that compassion needs to come from. And I see this vibrant, exuding woman who's just,
Yeah.
you see that, but I don't also see the inside, and I want to call it turmoil.
Yeah, and when I do, I try and always look forward. But to be honest, when I do reflect back on it, it was a very hard journey.
And
And
we're talking now, you're going, oh yeah, this is really hard, and this is 2025. But, back in the 80s, like, it would
look,
have
I
been,
was. I'm not trying to garner sympathy here or anything,
no,
but I
no,
suppose
no.
I'm a very spiritual person, and I have a very strong connection with God. And I believe that God wanted me to have this life, and I think that God wanted me to have this experience. But I've always felt that my angels have had their hand on my shoulder my entire time.
Yeah.
And with their guidance, I might not have had the support, but the physical support or the parental support. But I have had the support of someone who's always looking after me.
It's beautiful.
And I truly believe, like, I feel them here with me now,
Oh,
and
I
I
love
feel them
that.
with me all the time. And it's as I've got older, I've really, really connected more with my God and my spiritual self.
I love
And
that.
you talk about how does the trans experience made me a better therapist, but I really think it's my spirituality that I've really connected with. But I do think that if I didn't live my truth and I didn't transition and I didn't become the physical embodiment of what I wanted my physical experience to be, I don't think I would have ever connected with that spiritual side. And I think that in order to connect with that, I had to go through this. And that is something I've only come to terms with lately. And it's so important to me because it's given me a sense of reason that why I went through I did and why I lost my friends, and there's been a lot of loneliness because all those boys, they would be with me now and they would be in my life. But, so I owe it to them to live my best
You've
life.
done them proud. I can tell you that now. You've
Yeah.
done them proud. And I just couldn't, like I said, couldn't even imagine, wearing a mask as a female and trying to just be, live normal, right, is
Yeah.
hard. But imagine all the processes you've had to do, not just psychologically, but physically, but spiritually. And like, my hat goes off to you and anyone who's made the very brave change to transition and to be where you are. And for those who haven't, I mean, this isn't what this call is supposed to be, our conversation's about, but for those
Oh,
of
you
you
never know where it's going to go, do you?
but those who haven't, I mean, I don't know if anyone can reach out to you, but I'm sure there's help and guidance out there, and there's some people who are too scared, I suppose, to seek that help.
Yeah. So, and I think that we in our industry, we can just play a very small part in supporting that person. That's all it is at the end of the day. We are supplying a service and it's a monetary exchange and everything. But, I think if we can just create that little space in that little person's life and show them a little bit of kindness,
Yeah.
And if they get a tenth of the kindness that this industry is showing me, then they're going to be very lucky.
Love it. I love it. We're lucky to have you, TADLI, and my team. I'm very honoured and blessed that you know, you took my call. I was so excited. And you took the call, and I was like, yes.
I was so excited.
Yeah.
I was so thought, this is what I want to do now. This is the kind of advocacy that I want to do now within my industry that I love and has supported me so much.
Yes, and we may have some surprises. So I just say, watch this space. Peter and I think we've got a lot to do together.
I think we've touched on a lot of things tonight, but I think we could really sort of flesh it out and expand on it. So I hope people will come on the journey with us.
Yeah. So if you'd like to see Peter, please reach out to us, tadli.com.au, or Instagram, or to one of the girls at headquarters, and you'll be there in Sydney in person on the 14th of January to go in depth a bit more about, you know, consultation, electrolysis, the journey to try our Apolis, which is virtually painless.
Yeah.
I want you to try it now. I want you to try it.
Okay, I promise.
I promise. Okay. Well, thank you so, so much for sharing not just your journey, but your life and opening up your heart to us. I cannot thank you. Harry, wasn't it? Henry. I said Harry. So you and Henry, thank you for joining us, both of you. My one's around here. Oh, he's on the couch over there. So, and once again, thank you for your time. I really appreciate it. And yeah, lots and lots of kudos to you.
Thanks for the opportunity, and thanks for listening, everyone.
Oh, it's been amazing. All right. Thanks, everyone. Have a good evening, and we'll see you in our next live. All right.
Okay. Bye.
See you. And I don't know how to stop the video.